All right, I think we'll get started. So I'm Jess Parker, and I'm a writer and editor here at Right Side Up. Thank you all for joining us today for this webinar on how to use B2B ads data. This webinar is brought to you by Right Side Up and Right Percent. For anyone who isn't familiar with Right Side Up, we are a collective of growth marketing specialists who have helped more than 300 VC-backed tech companies hit their goals. We cover virtually all paid channels, including SEO, CRO, email marketing, analytics, and more. And Right Percent is a Right Side Up venture specializing in B2B projects. Right Percent is a direct acquisition agency that focuses on getting clients more customers at the best ROI possible. So today's webinar hits on a very important and useful topic: how to make the most of your B2B ads data by focusing on actionable revenue generating insights. And that's why I'm pleased to introduce you to Kevin Lord-Berry, co-founder of Right Percent. Kevin is a pro at helping scale fast-growing B2B companies in every vertical. And over the past 10 years, he's managed millions in ROI positive ad spend for brands like DoorDash, Zenefits, Masterclass, Segment, On Deck, and more. And he's here to share his wealth of knowledge with us today. So Kevin will explain how to identify the most useful data from your B2B ad funnel, what conversion events to establish as indicators of revenue, why you should rely on click-based attribution for conversions, how to track the way leads move down your funnel, and how to determine broad trends from your B2B ads data. So before I turn it over to Kevin, I'll just mention a couple of important housekeeping items. Please submit any and all questions throughout the session using Zoom's Q&A functionality. It's located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll plan to address as many questions as we can in the last 30 minutes or so. Also, we're recording this webinar, and we'll share the recording as well as the slides with you via email within the next few days. So that's everything from me, and Kevin, you can take it away.
Awesome. All right. Hello, everybody. We are going to have a wonderful presentation today. Shouldn't take more than 20 or 30 minutes at the time, maybe less. And afterwards, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So how do you use B2B ads data? Assuming you guys are on this call and you had a sensible reason to do so, your businesses are touching B2B ads generate data. How do you use that data to help your company make more money? This call is going to be split into a couple parts. So introductions, we're going to run through data sources on basically where does data come from is what data sources is. It comes from two things, ads and then your backend. We're going to go into that. Then we're going to go into how to use that data and then into Q&A. So we got an introduction to me. Don't need to spend more time on that. Look at that dashing fella staring in the distance. That's me. Right Side Up, you guys probably know. Great consultancy, get everything you want done. Marketing, it's good, use them. Right Percent, the B2B portion of Right Side Up that I run, we run more like an agency, unlike just the consultancy model. Talk to me if you want to know more about that later. So we're going to start with everyone's favorite thing in a presentation, a metaphor. Marketing data is a fire hose, and B2B ads data is no different. So if you just do a raw export of all the data possible from Facebook, AdWords, and Salesforce, you'll get a spreadsheet with like 50,000 rows and 10 million columns. So how do you actually sort that down to something manageable? The answer is to find data that is actionable and connected to revenue. Those are your levers for making ad data work for you. I mentioned there's two main sources of B2B ad funnel data. There's the ad platform layer. So what data does Facebook, Google, and LinkedIn send you? And the CRM or database layer. So that can be HubSpot, that can be Salesforce, or that could be a giant fancy database that your data science team cooked up, depending on your company size. So in the ad platform layer, the three most important things, and remember, we want to find out what can we focus on instead of looking at all the data, what's the most important stuff to focus on. The three types of data that the ad platforms have are spend, top level metrics, and spend is obvious, right? It's how much money are you spending? Top level metrics are things like clicks and impressions and cost per each, engagement measures, likes, posts, all that kind of stuff, and then conversions. So what do the ad platforms see about what's important down funnel? So a conversion could be, we'll get into it in a later slide. The important thing to know about top level metrics is that they're misleading nowadays. So in old school marketing, the most important thing to do to look at the top of your funnel was, okay, this campaign, how much is the cost per click? this ad set, how much is the cost per impression? And then judge your campaigns based on that. And the reason was, these campaigns were not that smart. If you're not optimizing on metrics and like, the nitty gritty of each ad on how it's performing in that basis, you're going to have inefficient campaigns. Nowadays, the ad platforms use a black box algorithm to show your ads. So often, because it's trying to optimize towards your conversion event, right? Which could be a purchase, it could be a sign up, it could be a lead. You'll find that some of your best performing ads might have the highest CPMs and CPCs. So the takeaway from this slide is top level metrics are misleading. Don't rely on CPC and CPM. They're not that useful on an ad and campaign level. There are occasions where an experienced practitioner can figure out how to use them. They're useful on like a giant platform level to see trends, but they're not very useful for decision making. So you can actually cut them for most of your reporting. Conversion events are the opposite. They're the key to success nowadays. So a conversion event can be a number of things. I mentioned it could be in e-commerce, it could be a purchase or an add to cart. In B2B, it could be someone filling out a lead form, or it could be someone getting to step 3 of your amazingly designed funnel. The important thing is that it can be anything. It's literally just an arbitrary portion of your site, an event that happens that you tell the platforms. You say, hey, Facebook, hey, listen up. This thing's really important. That's a conversion event. And because the modern platforms are all algorithmic based, they're like, artificial intelligence is like the Terminator. That's how you get good performance. You tell them, find me more of this, and they work on finding you more of this. Now, an important thing to note about conversion events is the AI is dumb and it's smart. It's both at the same time. If you tell it to optimize for something, it'll optimize for it, even if that's not a good idea for your business. So if you optimize for step 1 in your funnel, even though that doesn't mean anything and bots are filling it out, the platforms will happily do that. So when you're picking conversion events and when you're measuring them, there's a lot of thought that has to go into that, figuring out like what actually means something to your business. When you're picking a main conversion event, you want the conversion signal you're using to correlate to down funnel revenue as much as possible. So in other words, your main conversion signal should be a leading indicator of revenue. So, for a lot of B2B companies, MQL is their conversion signal, right? Marketing qualified lead. And knowing what MQL means for you, like what does qualified actually mean? At a lot of companies, it means any lead, but not all leads are made equal, right? So you need to figure out which, is it MQL, SQL, a type of MQL, a type of sign up that actually indicates revenue the best in your funnel. This is going to be the most important thing you're tracking in your data. The leading indicator of revenue should be like the centerpiece of your reporting. Everything you look at on a weekly, monthly basis. What is your cost per target lead? What is your cost per qualified lead or qualified sign up? You want an event ideally that happens within 1 day of click to be your main conversion event. So we're going to talk later about how do you look at data that happens down funnel? Like the lead comes in today and then a closed won deal comes 3 months later. We'll talk about that later. But for this main event, you want it to happen within 1 day of click. The reason for that is 2 things. One, it's easier to see on a day-to-day basis which campaigns are doing better in the platform. But 2, the platforms learn much better when conversion events happen quickly. It just helps the AI. 3, you want a conversion event that is 30 to 50 of those conversion events happening per week. So, you may say, Kevin, we don't care about leads. We only care about closed ones, but we only get 3 closed ones a month. So when you're looking at your data and you're reporting, what does it tell you if you get 3 closed ones 1 month and 4 the next month? It doesn't tell you anything. What you need is to find a way to find a conversion event that is an indicator of revenue, but has enough volume that you can actually get statistical significant results every week. And that's true both manually, your team looking at the data, as well as the AI being able to look at it. So that's that balance between event value and quantity for your budget. That's in this 4th slide. How do you balance number of events with quality of events? Again, this is all in the ad layer right now. So we're not focusing down funnel, just what you should measure from, you're getting directly from Facebook, Google, LinkedIn. click or view-based attribution is a must-discuss subject. The bigger the company you are, the tighter you should be with this difference. So let me quickly say what each one is. Click-based attribution is the platform saying, hey, user X clicked this ad, and then they completed a conversion event within 1 day or 7 days or whatever it is, that counts. View-based conversion says, hey, user X saw this ad, and then within 1 or 7 days completed a conversion event. That's the difference between the two. And by saw, it means they scrolled, like the image was on their screen for a split second as they were scrolling, like at least. So the answer to whether you should use click or view depends on your company size. Large companies should use 7-day click. So the reason being is if Facebook or LinkedIn or Google is only generating 5% of your MQLs, and you have, I don't know, direct mail generating 50% more, then you're going to get a ton of false positives from Facebook. It's going to see people viewing your ads who are actually converting from other stuff you're doing. And it's going to overwhelm both your ability to measure accurately and the algorithm. So you want to use click only. Small companies can do click and view. So if your website is only getting 10 views a week and your Facebook ads are getting 10,000, generally you can just trust like the view is going to give you a more accurate view of what Facebook is generating. The more you rely on view through conversions, so like if 10% of your conversions are view through, no big deal. I would say like the average company, if there's like nothing else messing up your data, like giving false positives, should be like 70% click through, 30% view through. If you see that the opposite, like 70% view through, 30% click through, like is true with some big companies, the algorithm is going to be less and less reliable because Facebook's not as good as learning from view through. There's too much messy data sources coming through, all that kind of stuff. So in summary, the ad platform layer, the important data are spend and conversion events. Don't worry about the 10 million other metrics there, cost per click, impressions, engagements. If you're tracking spend and conversion events, that's 90% of your job. For conversion events, it's really good to establish one or more conversion events as leading indicators of revenue. So knowing that MQL likely is going to have this much volume for us down the funnel. MQL, if they answer the question, how many employees do you have? If they say 10 or more, that's a leading indicator of revenue. Figuring that stuff out and tracking it. And then it's better to rely on click-based rather than view through. But if you're a small company, view through can help you get a better picture of the ad platform's performance. Okay, cool. Do you want to take questions real quick, like read them off to me, Jess? And then before I go into the next section, if there's any that are pertinent.
I think so far the questions are more general, so we can wait until the end for those.
Okay, great. Okay, so first was data source, the ad platforms. Now we're looking at data source, your internal data. So the CRM and database layer, there's two possible versions of this. For sales-driven companies, it's the classic lead to opportunity to close one pipeline. And there's steps in between, right? MQL, SQL stuff I mentioned. Then there's companies that don't have sales teams at all in B2B, and it's a self-serve pipeline. Accounts created, users engaging with the product, doing the free trial, users purchasing the product. The difference is this happens on the phone or email, and this happens on the website. But otherwise, a lot of the way you track it is going to be very similar. The first thing you have to do is have your internal system keep track of certain key data for each lead that comes in or each sign up that comes in. So that what you want to track is what ad that person clicked to get to your site, what ad set, what campaign, where they downloaded the form of every new visitor. These are the key things to keep track of. You keep track of this and you'll be in good shape for measuring ad performance. And just a quick note, generally the way this is done is through UTM parameters in URLs. So you've probably seen it in different links or you know this well, but you have a lead come in, they go to landing page, yourcompany.com, then UTM campaign equals ad set equals ad equals, and your system needs to be able to pull that data in to keep that attached to every lead record. The most obvious way to measure performance from ad campaigns is to track how far leads generated from those campaigns go down the funnel. And by the way, the slides aren't going to get any less wordy, so sorry about that. But luckily, it makes the presentation easy to read and remember stuff later. So when you're measuring campaign performance by down funnel results, it means you can compare campaigns across the whole funnel. So campaign A has a good cost per lead, cost per opportunity, and cost per close one versus campaign B, so on. There are two downsides to just measuring performance by down funnel results. One is that it can take time to get enough down funnel conversion data. So back to our example before, maybe your business closed ones are worth a ton to you. They're worth $1 million each, but you only get a couple a quarter. And it takes 6 months to do it. It means you're gonna need a long time before you can actually see which campaigns or ads are doing better than others. For self-serve businesses, sometimes leads that never become customers can be very engaged with the product. So this is downside number 2 of just measuring down funnel results. You might have somebody sign up, start using your product like crazy. They're hitting all the KPIs that are interesting, but they never convert. Like they only use it as a free user. So these are the two downsides to measuring purely on down funnel results when you're looking at campaign performance. So here's some example data, basically illustrating some of this. Here's 3 campaigns, same number of spend. They have different number of leads, you can see. One has a lower cost per lead, one has CPL, different cost per opportunity, and then different cost per closed one. So how do we read this data? So the first thing you look at is closed one. That says all campaigns are equal. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. We don't have it, it's not enough data. It's not stat sig to be able to tell us what's true or not. Same thing for opportunity. So in opportunity, we do have more data. Potentially campaign B might be your best campaign, but it's still a little close. And then with leads, cost per lead is obviously, this is stat sig. Cost per lead is the best in campaign A, but what does cost per lead tell you? Not much. So you can see how just looking down funnel, like we just discussed here, sometimes can be very frustrating. It doesn't give you all the data you need. So what else can we use to help make decisions with this limited funnel data? And usually the right answer is collecting more lead info up front. So we talked about on the ad platform side, how do we make a conversion event that signifies, that correlates to revenue down funnel? And it is very important for your business to collect as much lead data up front and figure out how that correlates with revenue. How many employees do they have? What's their budget? What's their title? Do they have the intent to buy? These are all questions that can be really powerful. So here's an example of a question. I'm an employee or I'm a business decision maker. Simple questions like that can really help you determine what the success of each campaign is before you have enough data to do it. Not having enough stat-sig data is the bane of every B2B company, and this is the way around it. And you can track all of this in your internal data systems, right? You can track number of leads that come in that say X, Y, Z. It's all something you can keep track of and all that. So now, what else do we need to figure out? Time to vintage. So how long does it take a lead to become an opportunity? And does this vary by channel? This is super duper key. So for instance, usually paid search leads close faster into customers than paid social leads do. That's because they have more intent. So if you're looking at your data, so I'm just going to jump ahead to an example. I don't want to jump that far ahead. If you're looking at your data, you need to know on average, how long does it take a lead to become a closed one by channel? You can't look at your data effectively without knowing that, at least your down funnel data. And while you're waiting for that to vintage, you rely on your leading indicators of lead quality. A lot of clients ask us about first, last, or multi-touch attribution. So ideally, you want your internal system to track all touches. So whether that's in HubSpot, Salesforce, or your internal super duper database, you want the system to be able to tell you all the answers so you can compare them. So for instance, when you go in and look at the data, you want to see customers from Facebook campaign X. Here's how the data might look. 10 customers with first touch attribution, 7 with last touch, 16 with any touch. Generally, First touch is the best for prospecting, with partial credit given for any touch before the close date. Not many clients have a mature enough data science operation to do that second part, like the partial credit. But first touch tends to be the best for getting an accurate feel for where to put your ad spend. And we can get into questions on that later as well. One thing we also get asked about a lot is multi-channel attribution tools. So there's a million tools out there that the pitch is that, hey, we'll give partial credit to everybody, in your company based on a fancy algorithm. In B2B, there's almost never enough down funnel conversion events to actually make these automated tools work for multi-channel attribution. So I recommend against them. The exception, maybe you work for a mobile app that has like a billion events happening all the time and it's B2B, but for most companies, these multi-channel attribution vendor tools are not very useful. You're going to want to figure out your own way to set this up with simple rules. So in summary, the CRM and database layer, it's really important. You need to track how leads move down your funnel, track leading indicators of lead value, because you're not going to have that many conversion events all the way down the funnel. So both of these are important. And then make sure you track the time it takes prospects to move from one funnel stage to another by channel. Using your data. All right, we're in the home stretch, people. So first thing, when we start out, I don't recommend you start out with dashboards if you're making something from scratch, even though that's the instinct people have. Instead, we recommend weekly updates, qualitative with quantitative, basically pace and figuring that stuff out. The reason for that is these four things. One, early campaign performance indicators will change too often and it'll break your dashboards. So again, this is when you're first building, like, what is my most effective way of looking at data? We just talked about leading indicators of revenue. Later on, you might find it's not number of employees. It's, number of spend that they say they want to do with you or something like that. And you'll end up having to redo the dashboards anyway. Two, at the start, you won't know what time to vintage is yet, which makes it hard to interpret dashboards. So search close ones are less for this week, but they take, much less time to do. So, that kind of interplay. Third, without down funnel events populating yet, a dashboard focusing on up funnel events may cause your team to focus on the wrong thing. So imagine you're getting 100 leads a week from a channel. And then all of a sudden you make a change to try to improve lead quality. And it works. You're getting more opportunities, but they take longer to come in. But then the dashboard said leads have gone down, a cost per lead went up. And then everybody's getting upset at you. So you want to make sure that your dashboard reflects what actually correlates to revenue for you. Lastly, campaign structure and naming conventions will change over time. You generally want to wait till those are solidified before building out a dashboard. Weekly updates. So if you're starting out, if you're not building a dashboard, what should you do? Track the important stuff we talked about above: spend, conversions, and cost per different type of conversion, each campaign in the last week, in table form. It lets you see instantly, where the actual sources of discrepancies are, and basically manually keep an eye on where things are going wrong, where they're going right, all that kind of stuff. Commentary, again, the same thing. In the early stages, a pure number, there's always going to be a caveat. Oh yeah, that week there was a big test we did. That week we did this and that. So commentary is vital when you're looking at the data. And three, a conversation on what the quality of current signups and leads look like. So same thing on commentary, but just specifically towards lead quality. What are the measures that correlate to revenue and how are they doing on that aspect? For mature ad accounts, the key pieces of data are spend, leading indicator conversion, and cost per leading indicator conversion. When you have enough data and your vintage time, it should also have that down funnel conversion or a number of down funnel conversions. So this here over like an account as a whole is an ideal way of looking at your data over time. It's very simple. It focuses on the core things. So you can see here, cost per lead you can measure, cost per qualified lead you can measure. And remember, because this leading indicator conversion happens within one day, you don't have to worry about vintaging. You can just compare apples to apples. This week did perform better than this week. CW here, standing for closed won, is just how I'm showing you to pay attention to vintaging. So this says closed one right now, but this could be 5 closed ones by the time you look at this a month from now. So that's why the leading indicator conversion is so important to track. Dashboarding again. So even for mature accounts, we don't recommend dashboarding on like a weekly basis. They're too noisy. They don't have enough density of information. We recommend dashboards on like a monthly and quarterly basis, but still weekly. You should be looking at tables and splitting out tables and spreadsheets. It just works better. In summary, using B2B ads data. At the start, analyze the top and bottom of the funnel data. That's the ad platform and the CRM together on a weekly basis. Over time, develop a weekly tracker that tracks your most important metrics while accounting for time to vintage. On a monthly and quarterly basis, you can graph broad trends to get an instant feel for account progress. And that's it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kevin. We do have a couple of questions that came in. First, we have what defines a small versus large company?
Okay, yeah, that is a good question. It's also a broad question. So there's a bunch of things in my doc. When I say like for a small company, do this, do that, it refers more to the maturity of your data operations. So you could be a very big company in a division where like no one's actually knows how to track the data yet, and I'd still call you a small company. If you're referring to this slide earlier where it says click only for small company or for big companies, and then click plus view through for small, that depends on basically what percentage of your total leads and revenue is coming from your advertising efforts. So if the ads are still very small compared to like relative to the rest of the company, then you're a small company in that regard. If it's a large portion of what you're doing, then you don't have to worry about it as much. There's less false positives.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up, we have, how do you think about conversion events across platforms, like say Google versus Facebook?
Yeah. So generally you should set up the same conversion events to fire on both. There's ways to do that, even though the pixels are built a little differently. There's ways to do that with Google Tag Manager or Segment or whatever. Generally, you can get away with less conversion events on Google, just a little bit. Facebook is most sensitive to algorithmic changes, but both are really quite similar. Like there's not real different strategies for conversion events on either one.
Next up, we have when measuring lead and sign up performance down funnel, how do we see closed won data that isn't in the form of last click attribution?
Okay, so generally, I'd recommend your system that looks like closed won to basically sort by lead create date or sign up date. So let me go back in this. Going back to this doc, I would not have these closed ones populate based on close date. You want them to populate based on click date or lead date, like something early date. That way, it basically auto solves what you're talking about. Like, how do you make sure it doesn't track by last click? And how do you technically set that up depends on your backend system. There's different ways to do that in whatever your system is, but whoever's managing your system can help you figure that out. If you're doing it yourself, then you might have to look around in HubSpot and stuff for the options.
All right. Next up, we have another question. On Facebook, do you measure offline conversions like MQLs and close won revenue and send this data back to the ads platform?
Yes. So it depends on the client. Generally, it is good to send that backend CRM and HubSpot, CRM and database information back to Facebook, back to Google. It's not gonna kill you if you don't do it, because it is technical work. It takes a while to set up. You have to use the APIs, but it does help. In some cases, when you're sending back the right data, it helps a lot, especially like post iOS 14 on Facebook, as Facebook has less data. So in short, it's a good idea to do that. Every company should have a program in place to try to do that more, but it's not 100% necessary. Your campaigns won't fail if you're not doing that.
All right, and we have one question left. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or in the Q&A. So the last question we have is, do you recommend different approaches for different industries?
So generally not by industry in the sense of like, a trucking company versus an HR software company, where different approaches do matter depends on what's your CAC, the cost to acquire a customer, what's your cost per conversion. If you're an enterprise company doing serious ABM stuff, trying to get $1 million deals, a lot of what you're going to do is going to be a lot more qualitative. So like you really have to talk to sales and figure out like, what is the quality of in each individual lead that comes in. There's few enough of them, and you have salespeople working on them that you can do that, rather than trusting just quantitative. If you're on the total other end, you're acquiring like some really broad B2SMB or bottoms up, kind of company. You can trust the data a lot more, a lot less qualitative stuff, and you can actually like automate a lot of your tracking, like to a greater extent.
Perfect. All right, unless we have any other questions. Oh, I think we have one last minute question that just popped up. Okay, so when you're starting out, do you first focus on driving lead form submits or earlier conversion events before a sale, or just go right to driving sales as the conversion event?
Usually there's not enough data to drive sales. So for some companies that have like a under $100 sale, like really like B2SMB, we'll just drive directly to that. Or in e-commerce, most of the time you just drive directly to purchase, right? In B2B, it's almost always too rare. The conversion event for sale, it costs $1,000, $5,000. And so you have to optimize further up funnel and just find the right place in between.
Got it. We have another question that just popped in. Do you have a demo account that you can walk us through that shows us exactly what the CRM data looks like and how sales folks are using the marketing info to find deals?
Let me think. I don't think I have anything like that ready for today. Maybe for some future thing, I could anonymize something.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, maybe we can include that when we send out the wrap up after. All right, so I think that was it for our questions. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing all of your information. Thank you everyone in the audience for being here today. We'll be in touch in a couple days with the recording and the slides. And if you have any questions, I think they can probably email you, right, Kevin?
Yeah, they can email me, kevin@rightpercent.com. Hit me up.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, everyone.
All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.